Tempest's floor. 8. Recap school report. Tempest, needing a school report on perceptions of the crawl, interviews her uncle Quasar. They bicker over a trade, her fixing his sink for information, though she lacks plumbing skills. Quasar relents, describing the chaotic events of Floor 8. Contestants collected monster cards for battles, including Carl and Donut, who ended up with creatures like a seal, a giant cat, and Oozy Jesus. The system was unfair. Carl lost his key to a sadistic player, forcing him to kill, and a beloved crawler, Tren, died. A nun-turned serial killer, Sister Inez, allied with a demon, marking Louis for death. Meanwhile, Katia and Donut faced a binding rule. Only one could leave Floor 9. The rich elite could finally die, promising chaos ahead. Tempest then asks if Quasar is in danger for representing Carl. He admits, for the first time, that they all are, making him grateful they live far away. Prologue. Polly, a residual, tells Carl that his kind exist in most civilizations with a primal engine. They were hunted, then ignored, but now there's a war among them. As Carl listens, time freezes, and Polly delivers a hidden message. He reveals the crawl isn't about survival, it's a system harvesting rare elements inside living beings. These elements sustain a central system, letting the elite live unnaturally long lives. Without the crawl, the system would slowly shrink, but greed keeps it running. Polly instructs Carl to drink from his coffee, installing an illegal enhancement granting access to the Fuse, a failsafe that would trigger a supernova, destroying everything, including the AI controlling the crawl. However, Polly, influenced by human compassion, warns Carl to use it only as a last resort. The moment ends, and Carl is abruptly teleported to Orin's office, left reeling from the gravity of what just happened. In Chapter 1, Carl and Donut arrive on the 9th floor, Laricos, in the middle of faction wars. The leaderboard shows Carl ranked #1, with a massive bounty and billions watching. The floor has 32,429 remaining crawlers, a ceasefire in place for 60 hours, and 10 teams, including the NPC-led team Retribution. Carl receives warnings about lost inventory and a pending truce offer. Laricos, a recently flooded city, is chaotic, with crawlers arriving randomly. Carl quickly checks in with Imani and Florin, while Quasar warns of major legal issues involving Sensation Entertainment. Donut is excited about her new Deathbed Hellcat sniper class, which includes stealth and long-range attacks. Meanwhile, Carl suffers from soul poisoning due to stored souls in his backpatch and must expel the energy before it worsens. With war looming, the Princess Posse must recruit members and strategize. Donut impulsively accepts a truce with Team Retribution, keeping them inside the city as battle preparations begin. In Chapter 2, Carl and Donut examine Donut's new sniper gear, including a ghillie suit that grants enhanced stealth and a boonie hat that increases targeting range. Donut complains about the look, but the combined effects make her a deadly long-range attacker. Mongo, still injured from the last floor, will have his missing wing restored using a rare pet potion, though Mordecai insists on analyzing it first. Carl collects the Gate of the Feral Gods, while Mordecai, dressed in absurd Canadian-themed attire, sorts through their loot. Donut is excited to equip Quan's cloak, which Carl insists she take. Mordecai warns that the ceasefire could end early under specific conditions, making preparation urgent. Carl unlocks several achievements, gaining rewards, including celestial loot, a pet adoption box, and an ominous warning from the AI. Meanwhile, Amion offers information on Carl's son's death in exchange for killing his brothers. Donut eagerly prepares to open her celestial box. In Chapter 3, Donut begins opening her massive collection of loot boxes, gaining mostly gold and trench-related scrolls. Among her rewards are powerful spellbooks, including Shield, Sentry, and You're Not Done Yet, which Mordecai reacts to with unease. Donut's Celestial Benefactor box from Long Haul Biological Waste Management Solutions contains the Tiara of 1,000 Lights, a customizable item capable of absorbing 99 magical buffs from other hats. She also receives a second charging pillow, allowing her to drain magical items twice as fast. Mongo's missing wing is restored using a rare revitalized pet potion. Mordecai insists on timing Donut's cloak of the Benevolent Champion equipped with a charisma cheat potion, maximizing its benefits. The cloak instantly buffs her weakest stat to match her strongest, making her significantly tougher. Her Wall of Fire, Heal Critter, Puddle Jump, and Bad Attitude spells are leveled up. setting her up as a battlefield powerhouse. Carl prepares to open his own loot boxes next. In Chapter 4, Carl begins opening his loot boxes, revealing a celestial heavy metal box from his time inside Ameon's Fist. His rewards include build trench scrolls, invisibility potions, a pet box,